Imani Wilson stood frozen outside her own bank's glass doors, access card deactivated, security guards blocking her entry. 20 years building Horizon Financial from nothing, and today they'd locked her out. Her phone buzzed. Her legal team was coming. Someone would pay for this betrayal. Before we dive into this shocking story of corporate betrayal and racial discrimination, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. If you're ready to witness how a powerful black woman fights back against a system designed to tear her down, hit that like button and subscribe to see more stories of resilience and triumph against all odds. Now, let's discover how Imani Wilson built her empire, only to have it stolen from under her. The bitter Chicago wind cut through Imani Wilson's thin jacket as she hurried to catch the bus. At 16, while other teenagers worried about prom dates, Imani calculated how to stretch her mother's meager paycheck to cover rent, utilities, and food. Gloria Wilson worked 3 jobs: hospital janitor by day, office cleaner in the evenings, and weekend shifts at a 24-hour diner. Despite their financial struggles in the South Side neighborhood, Gloria had instilled in her daughter an unshakable belief: education was the only ladder out. They can take your home, your money, even your dignity, Gloria would say, but no one can repossess what's in your mind. Imani took those words to heart, studying by candlelight when electricity was cut off, borrowing textbooks when she couldn't afford them, and graduating as valedictorian. Her speech caught the attention of a visiting Cornell University alumni, leading to a full scholarship that changed her life trajectory. College wasn't the promised land Imani had imagined. As one of a few black women in the finance program, she faced constant microaggressions. Professors expressed surprise at her articulate presentations. Study groups mysteriously had no room for her. One advisor suggested she might be more comfortable switching to a less rigorous major. "I don't need comfortable," Imani told him. "I need credentials no one can question." She graduated summa cum laude, ready to conquer Wall Street. Reality hit hard. Despite her stellar resume, she watched white classmates with lower GPAs land prestigious positions while she received rejection after rejection. When finally hired at Lancaster Financial, Imani quickly outperformed her peers, generating millions in new business. "Your numbers are impressive," her manager said during her first review. "But clients sometimes find you intimidating. Perhaps try smiling more?" 3 promotion cycles passed her by. The final straw came when Jason Turner, whom she had trained, became her supervisor. That night, Imani drafted a business plan at her kitchen table. If traditional banks wouldn't value her, she would create her own institution. Horizon Financial began in Imani's 1-bedroom apartment with 2 employees, herself and Terrence Bryant, a brilliant analyst also overlooked at Lancaster. Their mission was revolutionary yet simple: provide financial services to underserved communities while maintaining profitability. "Banking isn't charity," Imani would tell skeptical investors. "It's about recognizing untapped markets others are too short-sighted to see." Initially, larger banks dismissed Horizon as a novelty, but Imani's innovative risk assessment models, looking beyond traditional credit scores to evaluate loan worthiness, proved remarkably effective. Default rates remained low, while customer loyalty soared. Within 5 years, Horizon opened its first physical branch. By year 10, they had locations in 8 states. The financial industry began to take notice. Business journals labeled Imani the People's Banker for creating specialized loan programs for minority business owners. Her annual community financial literacy workshops became legendary, with people traveling from other states to attend. 20 years after starting with nothing but determination, Imani had transformed Horizon into a respected mid-sized financial institution with assets exceeding $2 billion. Her crowning achievement came last month, securing a $500 million investment partnership with Global Financial Group that would allow Horizon to expand nationwide. Not everyone celebrated this success. Richard Whitman, a board member who had joined 5 years ago representing early venture capital investors, had vehemently opposed the partnership. Expansion at this pace introduces unnecessary risk, he argued during the heated board meeting. Our core customers don't require this level of service. Imani had countered with comprehensive market analysis. Our customers deserve every service offered by larger banks, unless you believe some communities should remain financially underserved. The board voted 6-3 in favor of the partnership, with Richard and his allies outnumbered. Imani noticed his tight smile afterward, but dismissed it as wounded pride. She should have recognized it as declaration of war. The past week brought subtle warning signs. Executive committee members canceled one-on-one meetings. It reported routine system upgrades requiring temporary access changes. The CFO became evasive about quarterly projections. Conversations in the hallway abruptly stopped when Imani approached. This morning, she'd arrived at 7:00 a.m. as usual, ready for the executive team meeting. Her access card failed at the parking garage, forcing her to park on the street. At the main entrance, the same card that had worked every day for 2 decades was suddenly inactive. 2 security guards she didn't recognize blocked her way. "I'm sorry, Ms. Wilson. We have orders not to allow you entry." "Orders? I'm the CEO. I founded this company." "Not anymore, ma'am. The board has temporarily relieved you of duties pending an investigation. We're instructed to escort you off the premises if you don't leave voluntarily." As the realization of betrayal washed over her, Imani's phone buzzed with a text from her attorney, Zara Johnson. "Don't say anything. We're on our way. This isn't over." Standing on the sidewalk outside the building bearing her company's name, Imani took a deep breath. 20 years of sacrifice had prepared her for this moment. Someone had grossly underestimated her willingness to fight. The midday sun beat down on Imani as she paced outside a coffee shop 3 blocks from Horizon headquarters. Each step strengthened her resolve as she mentally cataloged 2 decades of obstacles overcome. Being locked out of her own bank was just the latest in a lifetime of doors slammed in her face. Her phone rang. Zara Johnson, her attorney since Horizon's early days. Before Horizon, they'd met when Imani sought legal advice about discrimination at Lancaster Financial. Though that case settled quietly, their professional relationship blossomed into friendship. "I'm assembling the team now," Zara said, her voice carrying the controlled fury that made her legendary in courtrooms. "Theodore's reviewing the bylaws, Patricia's handling emergency filings, and I've got 2 paralegals gathering precedents for similar corporate coups." They had security waiting, Zara. This wasn't spontaneous. Obviously planned for weeks, maybe months. "Where are you now?" "Crestview Coffee. I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of seeing me break down on the sidewalk." "Smart. Stay visible but dignified. I'm sending Calvin to pick you up in 20 minutes. Come to my office through the private entrance." After disconnecting, Imani noticed a text from Terrence. "They're watching my computer. Meeting in parking garage C, 3rd level, 15 minutes. Terrence had been with her from the beginning, her first hire and most loyal colleague. If anyone had inside information, it would be him. The parking garage smelled of exhaust and desperation. Terrence's normally immaculate appearance was disheveled, his tie loosened and forehead beaded with sweat. "They moved fast after you left," he whispered, glancing nervously around. "Richard called an emergency executive meeting. They've appointed him interim CEO, claiming financial irregularities discovered during a routine audit. They're locking down files, restricting access, changing passwords." "What irregularities? Our books are immaculate." "Fabricated ones. I overheard Richard telling Whitmore they needed to find something that would stick. They're targeting the global financial deal, claiming you misrepresented Horizon's financial position." Terrence handed her a USB drive. "I downloaded what I could before they restricted my access. Board minutes, recent financial reports, emails between Richard and other board members. They didn't think to cut my access immediately since I'm just an assistant." "Their mistake," Imani said, pocketing the drive. "What about the emergency board meeting? I wasn't notified." "Last night, 11 p.m. Richard claimed they couldn't reach you despite multiple attempts. Complete lie. The meeting lasted 20 minutes, just long enough to vote for your temporary removal pending investigation." Imani's phone buzzed with a news alert. Trouble at Horizon Financial. CEO temporarily removed amid financial concerns. The story was already breaking. They leaked it immediately, she muttered. There's more, Terrence said, pulling out his phone. One of the IT guys forwarded this to me by mistake. It was meant for Richard. The email displayed plans for a press conference tomorrow, announcing leadership restructuring and renewed commitment to traditional banking values. The subtext was clear. They're dismantling everything we built, Imani said, anger replacing shock. The Community Investment Division, the minority business loans, the financial literacy programs. The Global Financial Partnership is their main target. Richard claims it's fiscally irresponsible. As they parted, Imani noticed a news van pulling up to Horizon's main entrance. Word was spreading fast. Her phone rang again. Her mother, Gloria. I just saw the news, Gloria said. Remember what your grandfather used to say? When they fight dirty, you fight clean, but you fight twice as hard. I remember, Mama. This isn't just about you anymore. It's about everyone who believes in what you built. Don't you let them take it. Calvin, Zara's driver, arrived moments later. Through the tinted windows, Imani watched pedestrians going about their normal day, unaware that her life was imploding. She felt a strange calm settling over her, the clarity that comes when battle lines are clearly drawn. At Zara's office, the legal team had already transformed a conference room into Command Central. Charts, timelines, and statute books covered every surface. Zara, impeccable in a tailored suit despite the last-minute call, directed operations like a field general. The timing isn't coincidental, Zara said after Imani recounted the morning's events. The Global Financial Partnership threatens someone's interests. Richard's the visible opponent, but we need to identify who's backing him. Theodore Miles, Zara's associate specializing in corporate law, interrupted. I've reviewed the company bylaws. The emergency meeting violated 3 separate provisions. First, inadequate notice to all board members. Second, failure to establish quorum as defined in Section 7.3. Third, voting on major leadership changes without proper documentation of cause. That gives us grounds for immediate injunctive relief, Zara noted. We'll file at opening of court tomorrow. Patricia Chen, the litigation specialist, looked up from her laptop. We should be prepared for their countermove. They'll claim business judgment rule protection and argue that waiting for regular procedures would cause irreparable harm to the company. Let them try, Zara replied. No judge will. Her words were cut short by Imani's phone chiming with an anonymous text. Walk away quietly. Take the severance. Some battles aren't worth fighting. Imani showed the message to the room. They're afraid, Zara said with a tight smile. Good. They should be. What dark forces conspire behind closed boardroom doors? How far will powerful men go to maintain their stranglehold on wealth? The answer might shock you as we uncover the sinister plot against Imani Wilson. Through the night, Zara's team meticulously analyzed the documents Terrence had provided. By dawn, patterns emerged from the seemingly disconnected pieces of information. Richard Whitman's opposition to the Global Financial Partnership wasn't merely philosophical, it was calculated. Look at these meeting logs, Patricia said, highlighting entries on her tablet. Richard met with executives from Franklin Trust 8 times in the past 3 months. Each meeting occurred immediately before or after Horizon board meetings discussing the global partnership. Imani frowned. Franklin Trust tried to acquire us 2 years ago. We declined their offer because their community investment record was abysmal. Exactly, Zara said. And now, with your temporary removal, Horizon stock will likely plummet, making it a prime target for acquisition. Theodore added another disturbing piece to the puzzle. I've analyzed trading patterns. Richard and 3 other board members, Whitmore, Jameson, and Patel, have been shorting Horizon stock through shell companies. They're literally betting against the company they govern. That's securities fraud, Imani said. Among other crimes, Zara agreed. But proving it requires connecting the shells to them directly. The financial reports revealed more manipulation. Horizon's quarterly projections had been subtly altered to show declining profits in community lending programs that were actually performing exceptionally well. The changes were sophisticated enough to fool casual review, but substantial enough to suggest mismanagement. They've created a paper trail to support their claims of financial irregularities, Patricia explained. Anyone investigating would see these doctored reports and question your leadership. Mid-morning, Terrence called with new information. He'd overheard a conversation between Richard and board member James Whitmore in the executive bathroom. Whitmore asked if they were moving too aggressively, Terrence reported. Richard laughed and said, "The board was getting too comfortable with having a black woman in charge. This was long overdue." Then Whitmore mentioned something about returning to traditional banking values, and they both laughed. Imani's expression hardened. So the racial component is explicit, not just implied. Unfortunately, that conversation alone isn't enough to prove discriminatory intent, Zara cautioned. We need more concrete evidence. Theodore's analysis of the emergency board meeting minutes revealed another violation. According to company bylaws, removal of a founding CEO requires a 3/4 majority vote, not simple majority. They didn't have enough votes to legally remove you. Why would experienced board members make such an obvious procedural error? Patricia wondered. Because they're rushing, Zara concluded. The global financial deal closes in 10 days. They need to derail it before then. Investigating the global partnership angle, they discovered Richard held significant investments in Lancaster Financial, Horizon's competitor and Imani's former employer. Lancaster stood to lose major clients if Horizon expanded nationally with Global's backing. This isn't just about Horizon, Imani realized. It's about preventing a black-owned financial institution from competing at the highest levels. By afternoon, another piece fell into place when a former Horizon employee contacted Imani directly. Carlos Mendez had been terminated 6 months earlier for performance issues. I was offered $50,000 to sign a statement saying you pressured me to approve loans that didn't meet criteria, Carlos explained in Zara's office. When I refused, they threatened to blacklist me in the industry. I've been driving for a rideshare company since then. Who made this offer? Zara asked. A lawyer representing concerned board members. He never gave names, but the paperwork had Franklin Trust letterhead partially visible under other documents. Zara documented his statement, adding another thread to the conspiracy web they were uncovering. The most damning evidence came from analyzing a recorded board meeting from 2 months ago. Though the official minutes showed routine discussions, the actual recording, which Terrence had backed up, contained revealing exchanges about the global partnership. We need to maintain certain standards in our investor relationships, Richard had said. Global's diversity requirements would fundamentally change Horizon's character. Board member Elizabeth Jameson had responded, "Are you suggesting their emphasis on minority representation is problematic?" "I'm suggesting that merit, not melanin, should determine leadership," Richard replied, generating uncomfortable laughter from some board members. While reviewing media coverage, they discovered troubling coordination between Richard's allies and certain financial news outlets. The same talking points appeared across multiple platforms. Questions about Imani's qualifications, despite her 20-year success record. Vague references to management concerns. An emphasis on the unconventional nature of Horizon's community-focused approach. They're controlling the narrative, Patricia noted. Most reports present your removal as prudent risk management rather than a calculated takeover. Do you believe powerful people coordinate behind the scenes to maintain systems of inequality? Comment number 1, if you think corporate America still has deeply rooted racism. Or number 2, if you believe merit alone determines success. While you're sharing your thoughts, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to see how this shocking story unfolds. What would you do if faced with a conspiracy this vast? Would you fight back or walk away? As night fell on the most challenging day of Imani's career, she faced exactly this question, and her answer would change everything. Let's continue to the next part of this incredible true story. Part 5. The Counter-Strategy Forms. By midnight, Imani's impromptu war room at Zara's law office buzzed with determined energy. Sleep-deprived legal associates surrounded by empty coffee cups pored over documents, while Zara coordinated strategy on 3 separate phones. The initial shock had transformed into methodical resolve. "We need a 2-pronged approach," Zara announced, gathering everyone around the conference table. "Legal action is essential but insufficient. Public perception will significantly impact both court proceedings and shareholder confidence." Imani nodded. "Richard's team has a head start on shaping the narrative, which is why I've called in reinforcements," Zara replied, checking her watch. "He should be here any minute." As if on cue, the door opened to reveal Marcus Bell, the renowned civil rights attorney whose precedent-setting discrimination cases had reshaped corporate America's approach to diversity. His imposing 6'4" frame filled the doorway before he strode purposefully toward Imani. "Ms. Wilson, your situation represents everything wrong with corporate governance in this country," he said, shaking her hand firmly. "I've followed your work for years. Horizon's approach to community banking should be the industry standard, not the exception." With Marcus on board, the legal strategy crystallized. They would file for emergency injunctive relief first thing in the morning, followed by comprehensive suits alleging multiple violations: breach of fiduciary duty, securities fraud, discrimination, and corporate governance violations. "The immediate goal is reinstating you as CEO," Marcus explained. "Secondary litigation targeting individual board members comes later." While the legal team refined their court filings, Imani worked her own angle. Despite the late hour, she began calling key investors and community leaders who had supported Horizon from its early days. Pastor Michaels of First Community Church, whose congregation had been among Horizon's first customer base, immediately pledged support. "We're organizing a prayer vigil outside headquarters tomorrow. This community remembers who stood by them when other banks wouldn't even open their doors." Councilwoman Janet Rivera promised to raise questions about the suspicious timing at tomorrow's Economic Development Committee meeting. "Horizon's programs have revitalized 3 business districts in my ward. People deserve answers about this sudden leadership change." By 2 a.m., Imani had spoken with 15 influential community figures, all promising various forms of support. The groundswell was beginning. Meanwhile, Zara implemented a strategic media component. She contacted Diana Washington, an investigative financial journalist with whom she'd worked previously. "I can't promise favorable coverage," Diana warned during their call, "but I can promise thorough investigation and fair reporting." "That's all we're asking," Zara replied. "We have documentation suggesting serious conflicts of interest. Richard Whitman appears to be orchestrating a takeover that benefits Franklin Trust while personally profiting from Horizon's stock manipulation. Send what you have. If it checks out, I'll run the story tomorrow afternoon." The next crucial step involved securing support from minority shareholders. Theodore identified 20 institutional investors collectively controlling 22% of Horizon stock, enough to force a special shareholder meeting if combined with Imani's 15% ownership. By dawn, Imani had scheduled an emergency investor call for 7 a.m. Despite the early hour, representatives from 18 investment funds joined. "What we're witnessing is not merely a leadership dispute," Imani told them. "It's an attempt to fundamentally alter Horizon's mission while benefiting certain board members financially. The global financial partnership they're trying to derail would increase shareholder value by an estimated 40% over 3 years." Lawrence Thompson from Vanguard Investments spoke first after her presentation. "Ms. Wilson, your track record speaks for itself. 20 years of growth, consistently meeting or exceeding profit projections, and pioneering lending models now adopted industry-wide. Our fund stands with your leadership." One by one, other institutional investors expressed similar support. By the call's end, shareholders representing 35% of Horizon stood firmly behind Imani, not enough to immediately reverse the board's decision, but sufficient to create significant pressure. While Imani built external support, Terrence coordinated with loyal employees still inside Horizon. A network of mid-level managers began discreetly securing copies of unaltered financial records, preserving evidence of Horizon's true financial condition before Richard's team could further manipulate documents. Ashley Chen, head of risk assessment and a 10-year Horizon veteran, sent a secure message. Finance team working overtime, revising Q2 projections, making our community lending portfolio look toxic. I've backed up original models and analysis. Tell me where to send it. By 9 a.m., as morning financial shows reported on the leadership crisis at Horizon, Zara's team filed for emergency injunctive relief. Judge Elaine Rodriguez, known for her no-nonsense approach to corporate disputes, scheduled a hearing for 2 p.m., remarkably fast by court standards. Richard had anticipated legal action, but not at speed. His team scrambled to prepare their response, giving Imani's allies precious hours to continue building their case. The final component of their counter-strategy emerged during a late-morning brainstorming session. Patricia suggested they needed to anticipate Richard's next moves beyond the immediate legal battle. He'll call a press conference, Imani predicted. Positioned as transparency, but actually spreading misinformation about Horizon's finances. Then we preempt it, Marcus suggested. File a motion specifically prohibiting public statements about ongoing investigations without court approval. Argue that premature disclosure threatens irreparable market damage. Zara nodded appreciatively. And we request all communication between board members and Franklin Trust be preserved for discovery. That alone might make them nervous enough to reconsider their approach. As noon approached, the comprehensive counter-strategy was in place. Legal action, shareholder mobilization, community support, employee evidence gathering, and media truth-telling. But everyone in the room understood the harsh reality. They faced powerful opponents with significant resources and a substantial head start. Imani stood at the window overlooking the city where she'd built her financial institution from nothing. 20 years of overcoming obstacles had prepared her for this moment. The path forward wouldn't be easy, but she'd never taken the easy path. Richard thinks he's winning because he's playing by rules designed to benefit people like him, she told her team. But I've been changing the rules my entire career. This fight is just beginning. Dawn broke over the city as Imani, Zara, and Marcus arrived at the federal courthouse. The early hour didn't deter a small group of Horizon employees who had gathered on the courthouse steps, holding handmade signs reading, "Stand with Imani," and "Horizon needs its founder." Imani felt a surge of gratitude seeing familiar faces risking their jobs to support her. Inside, they filed motions for emergency injunctive relief, preservation of evidence, and temporary restoration of Imani's position pending full investigation. Judge Elaine Rodriguez, a stern woman with silver-streaked hair and reputation for intolerance of corporate shenanigans, would hear preliminary arguments at 2 p.m. Filing this early gives us tactical advantage, Zara explained as they exited. Richard's team will be scrambling to respond rather than carefully crafting their narrative. As they departed, Imani spotted a familiar figure entering the courthouse. Richard Whitman himself, accompanied by attorneys from Preston and Hollingsworth, an elite firm specializing in corporate defense. Their eyes met briefly across the marble lobby. Richard's expression of shocked recognition quickly transformed into calculated neutrality. "He didn't expect us to move this quickly," Marcus observed quietly. "Men like him always underestimate women like me," Imani replied. Back at Zara's office, they refined arguments for the afternoon hearing while monitoring news coverage. Financial networks reported Horizon's stock had dropped 12% in pre-market trading, exactly as Richard had planned. At 11 a.m., Pastor Michaels called Imani. "The community's responding. We've got over 300 people outside Horizon headquarters right now. Peaceful, organized, but making their presence known." A quick check of social media showed videos of diverse community members sharing stories of how Horizon's programs had helped them purchase homes, start businesses, and achieve financial stability. The hashtag #StandWithImani was trending locally. Shortly before the hearing, Terrence sent crucial information. Richard scheduled press conference for 4 p.m., planning to announce disturbing financial irregularities discovered during routine audit. Internal memo claims you approved millions in unsecured loans to unqualified borrowers. That's their angle, Marcus said, painting your inclusive lending programs as financially irresponsible rather than innovative. Those unqualified borrowers have a 97% repayment rate, Imani countered. Better than traditional corporate loans. Facts won't matter if they control the narrative, Zara warned. This hearing is crucial. The courtroom fell silent as Judge Rodriguez entered precisely at 2 p.m. Her reputation for punctuality and preparedness was well earned. She had clearly already reviewed their filings in detail. This court takes allegations of corporate misconduct seriously, she began. Equally, I take seriously the potential damage to a financial institution's reputation from unfounded legal maneuvers. Ms. Johnson, please present your emergency motion. Zara outlined their case methodically, citing specific bylaw violations in the emergency board meeting, evidence of conflicts of interest, and the suspicious timing relative to the global financial partnership. Your Honor, fundamental corporate governance principles were violated, she concluded. The founding CEO of a successful institution was removed without proper notice, without proper voting thresholds, and without substantiated cause. Richard's attorney, Philip Davenport, countered with practiced confidence. The board exercised its business judgment in response to serious financial concerns. Waiting for regular procedures would have risked significant shareholder harm. Ms. Wilson's removal is temporary pending investigation, not permanent termination. Judge Rodriguez interrupted his well-rehearsed speech. Mr. Davenport, the court notes that no formal investigation was initiated before Ms. Wilson's removal. The sequence appears reversed. Removal first, investigation second. This raises questions about the board's true motivations. Davenport faltered momentarily before recovering. The preliminary evidence was compelling enough to warrant immediate action. Then present this preliminary evidence, Judge Rodriguez challenged. We're prepared to do so in chambers, Your Honor. Public disclosure could harm the institution. Yet your client has scheduled a press conference for 4 p.m. today, presumably to discuss these very matters, Marcus interjected. This suggests concern for Horizon's reputation is selective at best. Judge Rodriguez's expression hardened. Indeed, the court finds sufficient grounds for temporary relief. Until a full hearing next week, Ms. Wilson will be reinstated as CEO with full authority except for unilateral expenditures exceeding $1 million. The board is prohibited from making public statements regarding unproven allegations or ongoing investigations. All corporate records are to be preserved without alteration. She fixed Richard with a penetrating stare. Mr. Whitman, cancel your press conference. This court will not tolerate attempts to litigate in the media what belongs in this courtroom. We reconvene Monday at 9 a.m. for evidentiary hearing. Outside the courthouse, a larger crowd had gathered, including several news crews. Imani, following Zara's guidance, made a brief, dignified statement. Today's ruling is a first step toward correcting a serious injustice. I founded Horizon Financial with a mission to provide equitable banking services to all communities. That mission continues. I thank the court for its wisdom and look forward to returning to work on behalf of our customers, employees, and shareholders. As cameras flashed, Richard pushed through reporters without comment, his face tight with barely controlled anger. The initial victory belonged to Imani, but everyone knew the real battle had just begun. By late afternoon, community support had transformed into a full-fledged rally. Over 500 people gathered outside Horizon headquarters, many sharing personal stories of how the bank had helped them when other financial institutions wouldn't. Councilwoman Rivera addressed the crowd. Horizon Financial represents what banking should be, responsive to community needs while remaining financially sound. This attempted corporate takeover is about silencing a successful Black woman who proved inclusive banking can be profitable. The rally received significant local coverage, counterbalancing financial news networks' more skeptical reporting. Diana Washington's promised investigative piece appeared online at 5 p.m., detailing the curious timing of Richard's meetings with Franklin Trust executives and raising questions about potential conflicts of interest. As evening approached, Imani prepared to return to her office the following morning. Theodore's phone rang, a confidential source within Horizon. After a brief conversation, his expression darkened. One of the board members was caught on hot mic after a CNBC interview, he reported. James Whitmore told the makeup artist he was tired of diversity hires thinking they deserve special treatment, and that putting that woman in charge was always a mistake we're finally correcting. Can we get the footage? Marcus asked immediately. Working on it. The makeup artist was offended enough to contact her friend who works at Horizon. The comment wasn't broadcast, but should be in raw footage. This potential evidence of discriminatory intent energized the team, but their momentum was tempered by disturbing news from Imani's brother Daniel. Someone had left threatening messages on his home voicemail, mentioning his children by name and their school. They're escalating, Zara observed grimly. Targeting your family means they're feeling threatened by our progress. Late that night, as the team continued preparing for Monday's hearing, breaking news alerts flashed across their phones. Franklin Trust announces interest in acquiring troubled Horizon Financial. The official statement cited recent leadership instability and potential financial irregularities as creating unique acquisition opportunity at advantageous valuation. There it is, Imani said softly. The real play. They never wanted to run Horizon. They wanted to buy it cheap after tanking its stock price. The timing was no coincidence. Despite Judge Rodriguez's ruling, Richard and his allies were proceeding with their plan, merely adjusting tactics. The stock would likely drop further tomorrow on acquisition rumors, pushing Horizon closer to vulnerability. As if confirming their analysis, Theodore discovered another troubling development. Someone had attempted to access Zara's office around midnight. Security footage showed two men in maintenance uniforms examining the door locks before being scared off by a passing security guard. They're looking for our evidence, Zara concluded. We need to move everything to secure storage immediately. The first day of counterattack had yielded important victories, but also revealed the extent of their opponent's determination. As they secured their documents and evidence, Imani understood with perfect clarity. This was no longer just about her position, or even Horizon's future. It was about whether institutions built to serve marginalized communities would be allowed to succeed or be systematically dismantled when they grew too powerful. Tomorrow, she would walk back into Horizon headquarters with her head high. The battle for her bank's soul and her life's work had only begun. How far would you go to protect what you've built? Would you risk everything against seemingly insurmountable odds? That's exactly what Imani Wilson faced as the battle for Horizon Financial escalated to dangerous new levels. Morning financial shows buzzed with analysis of Franklin Trust's interest in acquiring Horizon. Market specialists debated whether the announcement represented genuine acquisition plans or strategic manipulation to depress Horizon's stock price. Regardless of intent, the effect was immediate. Horizon shares plummeted another 15% at market open. They're creating a self-fulfilling prophecy, Theodore explained as the team watched stock tickers scroll across the television screen. The price drops make Horizon appear unstable, which causes more selling, driving the price down further. Marcus nodded grimly. Perfect setup for a low-ball acquisition offer. Franklin Trust's official announcement claimed they could restore stability and traditional banking values to Horizon. Language that struck Imani as a thinly veiled reference to dismantling her inclusive banking programs. At 8:30 a.m., flanked by Zara and Marcus, Imani approached Horizon's main entrance. Despite Judge Rodriguez's order, security initially hesitated to admit her. A quick call to the court resolved the standoff, and Imani finally re-entered the building she'd been locked out of just days before. The atmosphere inside was tense. Employees watched uncertainly as she crossed the lobby, many offering silent nods of support, but clearly afraid to show overt loyalty with Richard's allies still in positions of power. Imani's executive assistant, Beverly, hugged her tearfully before whispering, "They've been in your office for hours, taking things, going through files." Imani's corner office showed signs of thorough searching. Her personal photos had been removed, files rearranged, and computer equipment replaced. A security technician was changing the door locks as she arrived. "Ms. Wilson," the young man stammered, clearly uncomfortable. "Mr. Whitman ordered all executive suite locks changed yesterday." "Change it back," Imani instructed calmly. "The court has reinstated me as CEO." As she settled in, the extent of Richard's maneuvering became clearer. Multiple major clients had received calls suggesting they might want to temporarily diversify their banking relationships due to potential instability at Horizon. 3 had already begun moving significant funds to other institutions, including Franklin Trust. Her first executive team meeting revealed divided loyalties. CFO Jessica Taylor avoided eye contact throughout, while Marketing Director Andrew Phillips openly questioned whether Imani's reinstatement was in the best interest of stabilizing market perception. Only Terrence and 3 other executives showed unambiguous support. "We need transparency during this transitional period," Imani stated firmly. "Any communications with Franklin Trust must be documented and shared with the full executive team. Any board member requests for financial data must go through proper channels with appropriate oversight." After the meeting, Jessica lingered behind. Once alone, her professional facade crumbled. "They threatened my job, my reputation," she confessed. "Richard said anyone supporting you would be considered complicit in financial improprieties. I have twins in college, a mortgage. I can't lose everything." "I understand fear," Imani assured her. "But right now, Horizon needs people willing to stand for its values. You've been here 12 years. You know what we've built isn't just about profits." Jessica nodded slowly. "The numbers they're circulating about our community lending programs are manipulated. I have the original data showing those programs outperform traditional loans. We need that evidence for Monday's hearing." "I'll get it to you," Jessica promised before leaving. By mid-afternoon, an anonymous email arrived in Imani's inbox. The sender, identifying only as Concerned Board Observer, provided screenshots of private messages between Richard and 2 Franklin Trust executives discussing acquisition strategy, dated 3 weeks before Imani's removal. "Target vulnerable after CEO removal. Anticipate 30 to 40% stock devaluation. Acquisition at significant discount to book value. Dismantle non-traditional banking programs. Reposition as traditional financial institution." The whistleblower's message added, "Not everyone on the board supports this takeover. Some of us were misled about the financial concerns. Meeting scheduled tonight at Franklin Trust headquarters, 8 p.m. Imani forwarded the evidence to her legal team, recognizing its critical importance for Monday's hearing. Meanwhile, Zara reported that media coverage was finally becoming more balanced, with several outlets questioning the timing and motives behind the attempted coup. By evening, however, new threats emerged. Major institutional clients faced direct pressure from Richard's allies on the board. Sweetwater Pension Fund, which held significant deposits with Horizon, received calls claiming their funds might be at risk unless they publicly supported the leadership transition. Stock manipulation became increasingly evident as trading patterns showed massive short selling from entities linked to offshore accounts, the same pattern Theodore had identified earlier with Richard and his allies. The Securities and Exchange Commission would normally investigate such obvious manipulation, but the process would take weeks, too long to prevent immediate damage. More disturbing was the attack on Imani's reputation. A gossip blog published photos of her home with captions suggesting extravagant spending. "Is this where community banking funds really go?" The article failed to mention that Imani had purchased the modest suburban house 15 years ago and gradually renovated it herself. Then came the personal blow. Returning home after a grueling day, Imani found her front door slightly ajar. Inside, racist graffiti defaced her living room walls. Family photos had been smashed, and someone had spray-painted "Go back where you belong" across her fireplace. Police officers took reports and collected evidence, but their expressions suggested little hope of finding the perpetrators. This wasn't random vandalism. It was intimidation directly connected to the Horizon situation. Rather than returning to her violated home, Imani stayed at Zara's guest house that night. As they reviewed strategy for the coming days, Diana Washington called with crucial information from her ongoing investigation. "I've uncovered a pattern," the journalist explained. "Richard Whitman has been involved in 3 previous situations where minority executives were forced out of leadership positions. Each followed the same playbook: allegations of financial mismanagement, temporary removal pending investigation, eventual replacement. None of the allegations were ever proven." "Can you document this pattern?" Marcus asked. "Already have, running the story tomorrow morning. But there's more. Franklin Trust has a deplorable record with minority communities. They've been subject to 4 discrimination settlements in the past decade for predatory lending in predominantly Black and Hispanic neighborhoods. This context explained Richard's true motivation for opposing the Global Financial Partnership. Global's due diligence would likely have uncovered these connections during the partnership process, potentially exposing Richard's history and conflicts of interest. Saturday morning brought a potential breakthrough. The whistleblower delivered actual recordings of board discussions where Richard explicitly discussed targeting Imani because she was becoming too influential and changing the industry's understanding of which communities deserve banking services. In one damning exchange, Richard told fellow board member James Whitmore, "Banking has operated successfully for centuries with clear understanding of suitable risk profiles. Wilson's insistence on serving certain communities undermines that tradition. Sometimes the old ways are best." Whitmore had replied, "Her success makes it difficult to argue with her methods." "That's why we need to change the narrative," Richard responded. "Make this about financial irregularities, not about who deserves banking services. No one can argue against proper fiscal management." The recording provided crucial evidence of discriminatory intent disguised as financial concern. Marcus immediately began incorporating it into their court filings for Monday's hearing. By Saturday evening, the situation escalated further when Richard attempted to bribe Carlos Mendez, the former employee who had refused to make false statements about Imani. Carlos recorded the conversation and brought it directly to Zara's office. "He offered me $100,000 this time," Carlos reported, playing the recording where Richard clearly offered payment for amended recollections about Imani's management practices. "This is witness tampering," Marcus observed. "Criminal, not just civil violation. Is it shocking that powerful people would go to such extremes to maintain control?" Comment number 1. If you believe the financial system is rigged against minority leaders, or number 2, if you think anyone can succeed with enough determination. Don't forget to like and subscribe to see how Imani fights back against these increasingly dangerous attacks. As Sunday dawned, with just 1 day before the crucial court hearing, Imani faced her most difficult decision yet. With her home vandalized, her reputation under attack, and her employees threatened, was continuing this fight worth the escalating personal cost? The answer would determine not just her future, but the future of everything she'd built. Let's continue to the most shocking part of this true story. Monday morning arrived with leaden skies matching Imani's mood as she entered the federal courthouse. Despite the substantial evidence gathered over the weekend, uncertainty hung heavy. Judge Rodriguez's courtroom was packed. Journalists, financial analysts, community members, and curious onlookers filled every available seat. Richard and his legal team projected confidence, exchanging smiles and casual conversation. Imani noticed several Franklin Trust executives seated directly behind them, vultures waiting to pick over Horizon's remains. The proceedings began with Philip Davenport presenting the board's case. His argument centered on technical legal distinctions rather than addressing the evidence of conspiracy. "The business judgment rule gives corporate boards broad discretion in governance matters," he argued smoothly. "Courts historically avoid second-guessing these decisions absent clear evidence of malice or gross negligence. Ms. Wilson's temporary removal falls squarely within the board's authority to protect shareholder interests." Judge Rodriguez interrupted repeatedly, pressing for specific evidence of the financial irregularities claimed as justification. Davenport deflected, citing ongoing investigation and preliminary findings requiring further examination. When Zara presented their evidence of procedural violations and conspiracy, Davenport shifted tactics, arguing that procedural technicalities shouldn't override legitimate business concerns. Even if certain procedural formalities were overlooked in the board's urgency to address serious financial questions, the substance of their concerns remains valid, he insisted. After 3 hours of arguments, Judge Rodriguez delivered her ruling. The courtroom fell silent as she adjusted her glasses. "This court finds merit in both positions," she began. "While procedural violations occurred in Ms. Wilson's removal, the board's fiduciary responsibility to investigate potential financial concerns is also recognized. Therefore, this court orders a compromise solution." The compromise struck like a physical blow. Imani would be reinstated, but with significantly limited authority. Major decisions would require board approval. An independent auditor would review Horizon's finances, with particular scrutiny of the community lending programs. Most critically, the global financial partnership would be delayed pending audit completion. "This effectively gives Richard everything he wanted," Imani whispered to Zara as the judge concluded. "The global deal will expire during the delay. The audit will take weeks, giving them time to manipulate evidence." Outside the courthouse, Richard spoke briefly to reporters, his expression appropriately solemn, yet satisfied. "We respect the court's wisdom and welcome the independent audit. Horizon's stability is our only concern." The market responded immediately. Horizon's stock dropped another 17% by day's end, reaching a 5-year low. Financial analysts predicted further decline as uncertainty persisted. Franklin Trust wasted no time capitalizing on the situation, increasing their preliminary offer from $45 per share to $50, still representing a nearly 60% discount from Horizon's value before the crisis began. Returning to Horizon headquarters felt like entering hostile territory. Though officially reinstated, Imani found herself functionally sidelined. Executive team meetings proceeded without addressing major issues. Decision-making occurred in side conversations from which she was excluded. Emails regarding significant matters mysteriously omitted her from distribution lists despite her CEO status. By Wednesday, media coverage had turned decisively negative following a strategically planted story about Imani's alleged lavish spending. An anonymously sourced article claimed she had used company funds for personal luxury purchases, completely fabricated allegations, but damaging nonetheless. The personal toll mounted. Imani's brother reported receiving additional threatening calls mentioning his children. Her mother's neighbors reported suspicious individuals photographing her home. The investigation into Imani's house vandalism stalled without leads. Friday brought the darkest moment yet. Lawrence Thompson from Vanguard Investments, previously one of Imani's strongest supporters, called with devastating news. "I'm sorry, Imani, but our investment committee has voted to support Franklin Trust's acquisition offer," he said, genuine regret in his voice. "The sustained stock decline triggered our risk management protocols. Fiduciary responsibility forces our hand." One by one, institutional investors who had stood with Imani began distancing themselves. The independent audit, barely underway, already focused disproportionately on community lending programs while ignoring evidence of board misconduct. The final blow came when Zara discovered that the Bar Association had received an anonymous ethics complaint against her, alleging improper witness coaching and evidence manipulation. Though clearly retaliatory, the complaint would require formal response, diverting crucial time and resources from Horizon's defense. Saturday evening found Imani alone in Zara's guest house, exhausted beyond measure. For the first time since the crisis began, she allowed herself to consider defeat. Perhaps accepting Franklin Trust's offer would at least preserve some jobs, some programs. Fighting on might leave nothing but scorched earth. As this thought formed, her phone rang. Her mother. "I heard that sigh through the phone," Gloria said without preamble. "You're thinking about giving up." "I'm thinking about being realistic, Mama. They have more money, more power, more influence. Let me tell you something about your great-grandmother Eliza. Gloria continued. During Jim Crow, she saved enough from domestic work to open a small grocery store serving our community when white stores wouldn't. Local businessmen tried everything to shut her down. Vandalism, threats, price fixing. The bank called her loan with no warning. What happened? Imani asked, though she'd heard versions of this story throughout childhood. She walked 27 miles to the next county to find another bank. Walked back the same day. Kept that store open another 30 years. Know what she told me once? They expect us to break because that's what they would do in our position. Our persistence confuses them. Gloria paused before continuing. This isn't just about you or even Horizon anymore. It's about everyone watching to see if excellence and integrity still matter when they come from someone who looks like us. After disconnecting, Imani sat motionless, her mother's words settling into her consciousness. The path forward remained unclear, but surrender was no longer an option. Sunday morning, she awoke to alarming news. Richard had called an emergency press conference to announce significant findings from the still incomplete audit. This transparent attempt to further damage Horizon's reputation before markets open Monday morning violated the spirit, if not the letter of Judge Rodriguez's order. As Imani prepared to contact Zara, the attorney called first, her voice uncharacteristically animated. "Turn on CNBC now," Zara instructed without greeting. The financial news channel showed Richard entering the Horizon lobby for his unauthorized press conference. As cameras focused on him approaching the podium, a commotion erupted off-screen. The camera panned to reveal federal agents entering the building. "This is a surprise," the confused anchor commented as the feed cut to a Justice Department spokesperson outside the building. "The FBI is executing search warrants related to an ongoing investigation into securities fraud, witness tampering, and conspiracy," the spokesperson announced. "These actions follow significant evidence of market manipulation and corporate governance violations." The camera returned to the Horizon lobby where Richard was being escorted out, his expression stunned as an agent carried his confiscated phone and laptop. Imani watched in disbelief as the unexpected intervention unfolded live on national television. After a week of devastating setbacks, the sudden reversal seemed almost unreal. Her phone lit up with Zara's incoming call again. "Did you know about this?" Imani asked immediately. "Not specifically," Zara replied. "But remember Diana Washington's investigation? Apparently she shared her findings with the Securities and Exchange Commission, who passed it to Justice Department prosecutors. The timing is fortunate." Within hours, the landscape had transformed completely. Federal authorities established temporary offices in Horizon headquarters, interviewing employees and seizing records related to Richard's activities. The unauthorized press conference, intended to deliver Horizon's death blow, instead became Richard's public downfall. But even as this dramatic development unfolded, Imani understood that federal investigations moved at their own pace. The immediate crisis of Franklin Trust's predatory acquisition attempt remained. Monday's market opening could still determine Horizon's fate. As Sunday evening approached, exhaustion finally overcame her. Imani collapsed into restless sleep, uncertain whether the day's events represented salvation or merely a stay of execution. Tomorrow would reveal whether this 11th-hour intervention had come in time to save everything she'd built. Monday morning arrived with Imani preparing for another battle. Though federal investigators had temporarily disrupted Richard's plans, Franklin Trust's acquisition offer remained active, and Horizon's stock hovered near historic lows. The day would likely determine whether her life's work survived or was dismantled by hostile forces. As she reviewed strategy notes, her phone displayed an unexpected caller, Jennifer Chen, CEO of Emerald Pacific Bank, one of Horizon's longtime competitors. "Imani, we haven't always seen eye to eye on banking philosophy," Jennifer began without preamble. "But what's happening to Horizon is unconscionable. I have information you need immediately." Within the hour, Jennifer arrived at Zara's office with a manila envelope and determined expression. Though their banks had competed for years, professional respect had always underpinned their relationship. 6 months ago, Richard Whitman approached me about potentially acquiring Horizon, Jennifer explained. opening the envelope. "He claimed you were looking for an exit strategy and wanted a culturally appropriate buyer rather than traditional acquisition." "That's absurd," Imani responded. "I've never considered selling." "I suspected as much, which is why I recorded our conversations." Jennifer pushed forward a USB drive. "California's two-party consent law made this legally questionable, so I never used it. But given current circumstances, ethics outweigh legal technicalities." The recordings revealed Richard explicitly discussing plans to force Imani out using manufactured financial concerns, then sell to the highest bidder, with Richard receiving a substantial consulting fee for facilitating the transaction. "He approached 3 different banks with the same scheme," Jennifer continued. "When we all declined, he turned to Franklin Trust, who apparently had fewer ethical concerns." This evidence of premeditated conspiracy significantly strengthened their legal position, but Jennifer's next revelation proved even more valuable. After our government affairs team flagged unusual trading patterns around Horizon stock, we hired forensic accountants to investigate. They identified 17 offshore accounts systematically shorting Horizon shares, all linked to shell companies controlled by Richard, Whitmore, and board member Elizabeth Jameson. The detailed financial analysis showed millions flowing through these accounts, generating substantial profits as Horizon's stock plummeted. This wasn't merely conspiracy or discrimination. It was textbook securities fraud. "Why are you sharing this?" Imani asked. Jennifer's expression hardened. "Because banking is difficult enough for women without men like Richard rigging the game. My parents immigrated here with nothing. I know something about fighting extra hard for recognition." As Jennifer departed, promising to testify if needed, Terrence called with another breakthrough. Horizon's head of IT had discovered Richard accessing the company's financial systems after hours, systematically altering performance data for community lending programs. "He didn't realize our servers back up all changes with user identification tags," Terrence explained. "We have time-stamped evidence showing exactly which figures were manipulated and when." By mid-morning, another unexpected ally emerged. Clayton Williams, a senior accountant from the independent auditing firm, requested an urgent private meeting with Imani. Looking nervous but determined, he revealed disturbing instructions from Richard. "We were explicitly directed to focus exclusively on community lending programs while ignoring standard corporate accounts," Clayton explained, providing emails documenting these instructions. "When preliminary analysis showed your community programs outperforming traditional loans, we were told to re-examine our methodology until we found problems." Clayton's conscience had prevailed over professional pressure. He provided comprehensive data showing Horizon's community-focused approach wasn't just socially responsible but financially sound, with default rates significantly lower than industry averages for traditional lending. The momentum continued when media outlets began reporting on federal investigators discovering offshore accounts potentially linked to Richard. Financial analysts rapidly reassessed Horizon's situation, with several major firms issuing strong buy recommendations as the stock began recovering from artificial depression. The decisive breakthrough came mid-afternoon when Terrence executed his most daring move. Having maintained his trusted position in Richard's inner circle, he had been present during a private strategy session where Richard explicitly admitted racial motivation. "These diversity initiatives are destroying traditional banking," Richard had complained to fellow conspirators. "Getting this black woman out restores proper order. Franklin Trust understands maintaining certain institutional complexion." Terrence had recorded this damning conversation using his phone, capturing unambiguous evidence of discriminatory intent. The recording, combined with Jennifer's evidence, the forensic accounting, and Clayton's testimony, created an insurmountable case. By market close, Horizon stock had rebounded 22% as investors recognized the artificial nature of the crisis. Major financial publications shifted tone dramatically, with the Wall Street Journal publishing an investigative piece titled "Manufactured Crisis: The Attempted Hostile Takeover of Horizon Financial." Tuesday morning brought another seismic shift. 3 previously silent board members called an emergency session, visibly concerned about potential personal liability as evidence of conspiracy mounted. Richard's remaining allies found themselves outnumbered as the board voted to formally reinstate Imani with full authority and initiate removal proceedings against Richard, Whitmore, and Jameson. Judge Rodriguez, presented with the new evidence, issued a comprehensive ruling vacating her previous compromise decision. Her strongly worded opinion criticized Richard's apparent conspiracy to undermine legitimate corporate governance and explicitly cleared Imani of any wrongdoing. Most significant was the judge's unprecedented step of referring Richard and his co-conspirators for criminal investigation, citing disturbing evidence of securities fraud, market manipulation, witness tampering, and conspiracy to violate civil rights. By Wednesday, Franklin Trust abruptly withdrew its acquisition offer, its stock now falling as investors questioned management judgment. Several major clients who had withdrawn funds began returning their business to Horizon, citing renewed confidence in leadership stability. The transformation became complete when Global Financial Group CEO Alexander Montgomery personally called Imani. "We've watched this situation with great interest," he said. "Your handling of this crisis confirms what we already believed. Horizon Financial represents the future of banking. We're not only maintaining our partnership offer, but increasing our investment by 20%. Thursday morning, Imani stood in Horizon's lobby watching employees arrive. Many stopped to embrace her, express support, or simply nod in solidarity. The atmosphere had transformed from fear to collective determination. Patricia Chen approached with breaking news on her tablet. A major financial publication had published a comprehensive exposé on Franklin Trust's history of predatory lending in minority communities. Institutional investors were publicly questioning their relationship with the bank, with several announcing reviews of their investments. "The tide has completely turned," Patricia observed. Imani nodded thoughtfully. "When you build something authentic, the truth eventually emerges. Sometimes you just need to survive long enough to see it happen." As she rode the elevator to the executive floor, Imani reflected on the extraordinary week. The conspiracy against her had been designed with meticulous precision, leveraging every systemic advantage available to powerful men attempting to maintain traditional power structures. Yet it had ultimately failed against determined resistance and unexpected alliances. Stepping into the boardroom for the emergency session, Imani noted the absent chairs where Richard and his allies had previously sat. The remaining board members, some newly contrite about their silent complicity, awaited her first words as fully reinstated CEO. She had prepared extensive remarks about corporate governance reforms, expanded community initiatives, and strengthened ethical guidelines. But looking at their expectant faces, Imani opted instead for simplicity. "Horizon was founded on a simple principle," she began. "Financial institutions should serve all communities with equal respect and commitment. Recent events haven't weakened that mission. They've proven its necessity. Now, let's get back to work." The morning sun illuminated Horizon Financial's glass facade as Imani approached the main entrance. Unlike her humiliating lockout just weeks earlier, today she was accompanied by her own security team. Not to block her entry, but to ensure her safety amid the media frenzy her vindication had generated. Employees lined the lobby, spontaneously applauding as she crossed the threshold. The same security guards who had previously denied her entry now stood at attention, their expressions revealing embarrassment at their previous role in the conspiracy. Television cameras captured the moment for national broadcast, a symbolic reclaiming of space that represented more than just corporate leadership. For many watching, particularly people of color who had faced workplace discrimination, Imani's walk through those doors embodied resilience against systemic injustice. In stark contrast to Imani's dignified return, another scene unfolded simultaneously on another floor. Federal agents escorted Richard Whitman and board members Whitmore and Jameson from the building. Richard's expression betrayed disbelief rather than remorse, the stunned look of someone who had never contemplated failure because the system had always protected men like him. A news reporter thrust a microphone toward Richard as he was guided toward a waiting vehicle. Mr. Whitman, do you have any comment on the securities fraud allegations? Richard's attorney intervened. My client has no comment at this time. We're cooperating fully with authorities and confident this misunderstanding will be resolved favorably. The footage cut back to Imani addressing employees in the main atrium, her voice steady and forward-looking. What defines Horizon isn't one person's leadership, but our collective commitment to equitable financial services. Recent events tested that commitment but ultimately strengthened it. The contrast between these parallel scenes dominated financial news throughout the day. Commentators noted the symbolic significance of a black female CEO reclaiming her rightful position, while those who had conspired against her faced potential criminal charges. By afternoon, an emergency shareholder meeting convened to formally ratify Imani's reinstatement and approve governance changes designed to prevent future coups. The boardroom, typically a space for restrained corporate decorum, erupted in standing ovation when Imani entered. Lawrence Thompson from Vanguard Investments, who had temporarily wavered in his support during the darkest period, approached immediately after the meeting. We should have maintained our position regardless of short-term fluctuations, he acknowledged. Your leadership has consistently delivered value precisely because you challenge banking orthodoxy. The reinstatement vote passed unanimously, with additional provisions removing Richard's remaining allies from the board and establishing an ethics committee with specific authority to review governance decisions for discriminatory impact. Alexander Montgomery, CEO of Global Financial Group, arrived personally to finalize their partnership agreement. What had been a $500 million investment transformed into $650 million, with accelerated timeline for national expansion. Recent events confirmed what we already believed, Alexander explained during the signing ceremony. Banking needs fundamental transformation. Horizon's approach to community investment represents banking's future, not just its conscience. The partnership announcement sent Horizon stock surging to record highs, nearly double its value before the crisis began. Financial analysts who had questioned Imani's leadership now praised her innovative risk management and community-centered banking model. Justice moved with surprising speed in the criminal investigation. By month's end, federal prosecutors announced indictments against Richard, Whitmore, and Jameson on multiple charges: securities fraud, wire fraud, conspiracy, market manipulation, and witness tampering. The potential sentences exceeded 20 years. Franklin Trust faced its own reckoning as investigations revealed its executives had knowingly participated in the scheme to artificially depress Horizon's stock. Class action lawsuits from shareholders followed, alongside regulatory scrutiny of their lending practices in minority communities. 60 days after her reinstatement, Imani implemented the governance reforms promised during the crisis. The new structure included unprecedented transparency requirements for board deliberations, explicit diversity commitments for leadership positions, and revolutionary accountability measures, allowing community representatives voting rights on certain lending policies. Most significantly, Imani established the Horizon Opportunity Foundation, funded with $20 million from her personal shares, creating scholarships for minority students pursuing finance careers. The Foundation's mission statement directly addressed the industry's representation problems. Financial institutions cannot truly serve all communities unless their leadership reflects those communities. 6 months later, Imani delivered the keynote address at the National Banking Association's annual conference, a platform previously dominated by traditional banking executives. Her speech, titled "Banking Beyond Barriers," articulated the philosophy that had built Horizon and withstood attempts to dismantle it. Financial inclusion isn't charity, it's smart business, she told the audience of industry leaders. For generations, traditional banking overlooked enormous potential in underserved communities, mistaking unfamiliarity for risk. When we recognize this blind spot, we discover untapped markets with extraordinary loyalty and performance. The industry publication American Banker featured Imani on its cover with the headline, "Banking's Revolutionary: How Imani Wilson Survived a Coup and Changed Finance Forever." The article detailed how Horizon's community lending programs consistently outperformed traditional portfolios, challenging decades of risk assessment orthodoxy. 1 year after the attempted coup, Horizon Financial had expanded to 25 states, with assets exceeding $15 billion. The community lending model Imani had pioneered was being studied at top business schools and cautiously adopted by competing institutions. On the anniversary of her reinstatement, Imani hosted a mentorship event for young women of color interested in finance careers. Among the participants was Jessica Taylor's daughter, a brilliant economics student inspired by witnessing her mother's eventual courage during the Horizon crisis. The most valuable lesson from last year isn't about banking strategies or corporate governance, Imani told the gathered students. It's that systems designed to exclude you can be transformed, but transformation requires persistence beyond what seems reasonable. When they expect you to break, continue. Your resilience confuses them and ultimately changes everything. As the mentorship program concluded, Imani walked through Horizon's lobby where a new installation had been unveiled. A wall displaying photographs of community businesses financed through Horizon's programs. Each image represented a family supported, a dream realized, a community strengthened. Running her fingers along the installation's dedication plaque, Imani read the words she had chosen personally. For my mother, Gloria, who worked 3 jobs so I could have one that matters. And for everyone who persists when surrender seems reasonable. The path forward is never easy, but always possible. Imani Wilson's journey illustrates powerful truths about persistence in the face of systemic racism and corporate betrayal. Her story teaches us that excellence alone isn't always enough when fighting entrenched power structures. You must also gather allies, document everything, and prepare for backlash when you threaten the status quo. The conspiracy against Imani succeeded initially because it exploited existing biases and used financial jargon to mask discriminatory intent. By framing their attack as protecting shareholder value rather than what it was, an attempt to prevent a black-owned institution from gaining greater market influence, Richard and his allies nearly succeeded. Imani's triumph came from refusing to accept defeat even when logically justified. When traditional power players united against her, she found strength in unexpected alliances and community support. Her victory wasn't just personal, but represented hope for systemic change. Perhaps most importantly, her story reveals how discrimination in modern America often operates, not through explicit racism, but through coded language, technical maneuvers, and institutional barriers. By recognizing these tactics and confronting them directly, Imani not only reclaimed her position, but transformed banking's approach to underserved communities. The ultimate lesson? As Gloria wisely told her daughter, when they expect you to break, continue. Your persistence confuses them, and ultimately changes everything. What would you do if someone tried to steal everything you've built? Would you fight back with the same determination as Imani Wilson? Share in the comments a time when you had to stand your ground against unfair treatment. Your story might inspire someone else facing similar challenges. If this account of overcoming racial discrimination in corporate America resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more powerful stories of resilience against injustice. By sharing this video, you're helping spread awareness about how discrimination operates in modern workplaces and how it can be defeated through courage and persistence. Thank you for joining me on this journey through Imani's remarkable story. Remember, in your own battles for fairness and recognition, sometimes victory comes not from having the most power, but from having the strength to keep fighting when others would surrender. Stay resilient, stay determined, and never let anyone diminish your worth or steal your achievements.